Three, two, one, liftoff.
Cannabinoid Connect, the nation's most diverse cannabis-related podcast.
And we're live. What's going on, Wyatt? Nice to see you again, man.
What's going on? How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's been a while since I saw you last. You graciously invited me to check out your facility in Louisville, which is right down the road from where I'm at. So I appreciated the tour and I mean all the operations, man. It's quite a facility and business that you're running right now with Wyatt Perp.
Yeah, no, I'm appreciate you coming out here, Kevin. We really enjoyed having you. Kind of show you how we do this. It's not like a store type deal. It's more of a distribution facility and a lot of logistics and challenges that I've figured out how to meet in a relatively small space and do like 7 figures out of annually. It's been a really interesting ride the last 3 years. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm super stoked to be talking to you today.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I'm stoked as well. And I gotta say, firsthand, as a consumer, I enjoyed the product, man, through and through. I mean, from the flower that y'all produce, THCA, which I can't wait to dive into and talk about, the whole background story of THCA, how it's emerged in, especially in Texas. But also the edibles, man. I got a funny story for you. So, my wife's aunt has been experimenting with various hemp slash cannabis products here in Texas. And she's looking for something for a sleep remedy, right? Like at nighttime when she's ready to unwind, an alternative choice outside of alcohol. So she mentioned to me that her son, who's in his early 20s, gave her like a Delta 8 product. I don't even know the brand. I think it was some type of like gas station type of brand or whatever, but it didn't help her. It didn't work. She's like, I didn't feel anything. I don't know what's going on. And as I mentioned, you guys hooked me up with some edibles and some gummies, and I was like, "Well,
For
try
sure.
this." I gave her a pack, and I was like, I would say take one to start, maybe even half of one, but like, because she thought she could take two, so she took one, and just like every edible story, right? You're not feeling it, and then I'm gonna take another one, and she took a second, and dude, she was like, it wasn't a bad experience for her by any means, but it was potent. I mean, it does what the product says it's going to do. And it's something that she wasn't really accustomed to and used to. And I think she was like crafting and she like paused and was like, wait a second, how do I move my hands? Like what? She had like a freeze up moment and she's like, Kevin, that stuff works. That was legit, So
Dude,
she'll definitely, be more conscious in terms of dosing now that she kind of knows her limits and what her body can take. But yeah, man. So you made me look good in that sense with the family, and I've really enjoyed the
awesome.
product. So,
Well, man, my
yeah,
edibles, they're different than everything else on the market. I kind of told you about it, but all of our edibles are actual real THC. I like to make fun of everyone in the hemp space and tell them to grow up and sell some real drugs because they all sell Delta 9, which is a compound, but they all make it from CBD isolate. So it's like a synthetic isomer. It's kind of, it doesn't really work like conventional cannabis. So, I've refined a way to be able to separate the Delta 9 THC naturally from a massive hemp extraction. And it's not an isomer, it has all the minors in it. So, I mean, it's no different than any dispensary product you could get in any legal state. It's a completely natural, full spec Delta 9 THC. And I think that is the best products that I have ever brought to market or offered is figuring out a way to do this naturally rather than synthetically. Because I feel like if people actually knew what they were eating and understood that they were just taking isolate with chemicals that have been heated up in a reactor and then called actual THC, that I don't call that THC. I call that like meth. You know what I mean? Not really. But at the same time, I would just want a natural solution. And I had a kidney transplant. So a lot of this has been really selfish and me just wanting to be able to access the medicine in a natural way that wouldn't hurt myself and jeopardize my own health. So yeah,
That's
dude,
a
my edibles smack.
Yeah, I mean they do for sure. And that was one of the things I wanted to kick things off by talking to you about is like how this all started, but you've kind of already alluded to it. And that is, I mean, you had your kidney transplant, you had some health underlying health conditions, that you were dealing with. So it sounds like you really took ownership of your health and tried to find a solution to your point that is the most natural that you could get when it comes to
Oh,
THC consumption.
100%. I started this way before with cannabis, though. In order to get transplanted, I mean, you have to completely change your diet. And realistically, what you put in your body is what you get out of it. So I did dialysis for a long time. If you're in a dialysis clinic drinking milkshakes and eating fast food, you're not getting transplanted. You have to switch to a real nutritionist based diet. They get you blood samples. You have to be a disciplined individual to get transplanted. So I wasn't going to jeopardize that when I had known that I could do this naturally. I was just going to stay. I've tried to stay as health conscious as I can since that gift of life was given to me. I don't want to jeopardize it by doing research chemicals just because they're legal. You know what I mean? Now it's not I see this as a real gift from God and from the people who all participating and giving me the second chance to be able to even do this and be here right now. So I'm not going to jeopardize that in a way that's not through my health. You know what I mean? I'm going to live life, but I'm not going to
Right.
be stupid either. I mean, I'm very grateful for what I have.
Yeah. I mean, it shows that that discipline really runs through. I mean, outside of even just your eating habits, your diet, it's like if I'm going to even run a cannabis hemp company, I mean, I'm going to do it the right way in terms of the products that I'm producing and manufacturing, right? So
Oh,
let's
for sure. They're the best. They're all natural. I've never sold a synthetic isomer and I take great pride in manufacturing the highest quality products possible. Everybody else is really I don't make as much money as everybody else because my I have to sell everything for the same price, so they're not as margin rich. But most people are in this for money, and I really put my heart and soul into this. So there's a lot more to this for me than just financial gain. Just getting this out and allowing this to spread the way it has and watch it grow from nothing and planting all these seeds. It's like I've become I used to be a farmer of cannabis and now I'm a farmer of ideas and men, if you will.
hmm Well, let's dig into it. I mean, let's talk about your method, how it is differentiated and innovative among other producers in Texas specifically. We could even, of course, go nationwide, but let's first start with the foundation so that the listeners really have an understanding of what we're talking about here if they're coming into it new, right? So let's talk
Okay.
about the emergence of THCA, how it's different than other cannabinoids in legal hemp market, right? And how and what your method is.
I mean, realistically, my method isn't that much of a secret as much as it's just the knowledge of the plant. Um, Understanding the basic chemistry of the plant and understanding nature and also loving the Constitution and understanding my constitutional rights as they stand out under the First Amendment of recognizing natural law. So the methods here are realistically, THCA is no different than any other type 1 cannabis, which is high THC cannabis. It is cannabis. Cannabis is cannabis. It's all the same plant. There really aren't two differentiations. There's CBD, there's THC, but all conventional cannabis legally under the law, is the way that they've been written, is actually hemp. Marijuana is like a word that no one should ever say again. Honestly, it's basically an adverb of cannabis that is a legal description of something that has been made prohibitive to the people through a treaty called the Controlled Substances Act. Henry Anslinger, who was the director of the FBI, knew that in order to meet the constitutionality of making it to where you could be arrested for simply inhaling a flower, that would never meet the constitutionality before the Supreme Court unless it was tied to a treaty that would supersede those rights. And a treaty is the law of the land. The Constitution itself is a treaty. It was formed through the Treaty of Paris. So that is considered the law of the land, and that supersedes all laws. And the laws of nature are in the First Amendment need to be respected. But first of all, the treaties have to be respected. And in 2014, all of the countries basically on Earth who are part of the Controlled Substances Act, which there's over 150 of them. Everyone that's part of the U.S. banking system is essentially part of this treaty. They redefined what marijuana is into legal hemp, and they put it into a treaty, and then they passed these legislation across the entire world. Essentially, this isn't just legal here; it's legal in any country that has hemp legislation in place of less than 0.3 or even 0.1%. In America, the way that the testing works is when you grow conventional, what you would call marijuana, you have to grow it under a marijuana license, which costs millions of dollars. So you have to be in a little club in order to do it that most people will never be able to even have access to. I never would have been able to develop these technologies or been able to have fun or bring this to the people, these solutions, had I been forced to come up with $20 million and to be able to even participate just to pay the police off. You know what I mean? That's not real. So I guess it is the best way to put it is through this treaty. Sorry, I kind of lost my place here for a second.
You're good.
The treaty is what makes it all legal, and all of these other countries and nation states came up with essentially a 0.3%, and they defined that all acids, isomers, and derivatives of THC are separate in the calculation of THC. There's only one acid in THC, and that's THCA. That's THC acid. So all conventional cannabis plants, essentially, unless they're sativa plants, they have they're going to be, as they grow, they're all THCA. They don't have any Delta 9 in them. Then when you cut them down and you harvest them, they decarboxylate into Delta 9. So when you grow under a marijuana license and you pay this ridiculous fees to do this, the way that they do their testing is they harvest their plants, they cure their plants, and then they test their plants. After about 4 weeks, they test their plants from harvest. It's decarboxylated about 1.5 to 2.5% D9. So if you were to go to a conventional dispensary in Colorado or Las Vegas and you bought cannabis, it would usually say like 25% THCA, 3% Delta 9. That's because the way they tested it. Under all the hemp guidelines, the USDA regulates hemp, not a marijuana program. So it's a totally different federal program through the Department of Agriculture, and you test the plants while they're living. And if you test a conventional cannabis plant while it's alive, it's going to basically be THCA every time, less than 0.3%. So I see it as it is not possible that every nation state on earth didn't understand 6th grade science and an 8th grade math equation, and that they legitimately, legally, in the way that they write legalities, named acids as the first priority is separate in the calculation of THC, that was intentional. There's no way that this wasn't intentional. It's just maybe a lot of people in the United States didn't read the bills that they passed, which I think is a high probability. But this is definitely intelligent design because it was both with the oil and with the cannabis. They basically just reverse engineered the legal definitions through the same treaty that made it legal and made it legal through hemp. So all you do is literally test the plant at a different time and it's all legally hemp. Like you can prove it over and over and over again. And this is the big problem, is that every single cannabis arrest, I believe, since 2018 is unconstitutional. The reason being is that the state governments, they don't use the same testing as everyone else in the conventional cannabis space. We send all of our testing off and get it all done through HPLC, which is called high pressure liquid chromatography. And when we do that, it separates all the different cannabinoids, and you can see the THCA is separate than the Delta 9, and you can see it's very high in the plant while it's growing. The when the police or the state tests the cannabis, they all use a method of testing that's called GCMS testing, gas chromatography. So they're heating up the cannabis at over 500 degrees, and they're saying that THCA doesn't exist and that it's all 27% Delta 9 THC flower, which I know as somebody who loves cannabis, that the only way that there could be a 27% D9 flower is if it was a cannabis plant that was growing next to a volcano that just erupted. It's not possible. That defies all science. That's not what cannabis does. It's not Delta 9 THC. Conventional type 1 cannabis is THCA, and it decarboxylates through either nature or forced when people catch it on fire into Delta 9 THC. So under the very definition of the law, I don't think it's fair that the judges, every judge in the United States, every lawyer, every criminal defense lawyer, that for the last 5 years, this substance legally, scientifically under the law is legal. And they've been using a testing standard that whether you're in possession of legal hemp or marijuana, regardless, they're going to convict you of a crime 100% of the time because they're manufacturing legal compliant hemp products in a Schedule I narcotics in their possession, charging you with those test results. And if you don't have the knowledge I possess, then you get charged. You plead guilty, and your lawyer even advises you to plead guilty to a crime that's not even really a crime. So it's a huge conflict on the civil rights issue of cannabis. And I felt like if I was put in this position, that's what I needed to do. So my motives for this were not necessarily monetary, but once I realized that they're violating your First Amendment right of the Constitution by violating all natural law and guaranteeing convictions 100% of the time, that is highly immoral. That's like communist China stuff. Meanwhile, they sell multi-million-dollar licenses to sell actual marijuana that they call it marijuana, medical marijuana. Those are Schedule I narcotics. That's why you have to buy them with cash. They don't have access to the banking system. So why is the state selling illegal narcotics and handing out monopolies to all their friends for millions of dollars and using the exact same treaty to arrest people that simultaneously, under the actual law, they're manufacturing all the test results and guaranteeing guilt 100% of the time? It's not right, and that needs to be addressed like immediately. That is the legal basis behind why all these companies are pushing THCA so hard, is that they understand that the government is doing a form of testing that is not cohesive with the cannabis industry and the DEA testing standards. So that's what everyone, I feel like, needs to really understand and realize, is that this wasn't just legal right now. THCA is great and it's awesome, but it's been legal since 2018. So all of the cannabis convictions since 2018, by them saying THCA doesn't exist when they were supposed to separate it, all of those tests should be thrown out of court and all of those convictions should be thrown out of court. Cannabis has been federally legal and internationally legal since 2018. This just because this has happened over the last 6 months doesn't mean that it just became legal. You know what I mean? So that's what I stand for. I'm kind of like a political activist, if you will, not so as like out here doing crazy things, but I once I saw the actual basis behind how this was legal, I understood that it was all based upon the testing and a bunch of legal jargon. So if you just use a different license and you grow it as hemp and you test it while it's alive, you're not committing any fraud whatsoever, and it's all legally hemp. If you pay $1 million and you grow it under a marijuana license and you grow it a month after you harvest it, you're in possession of marijuana. If you're in possession of marijuana, you don't have access to any of the amenities that the people in the hemp industry do, like the federal court system, the banking system, the ability for me to insure all my products. All of those things I have that the conventional cannabis industry isn't afforded, because in reality, the way the law is written, all these marijuana companies sell Schedule One narcotics under the Controlled Substances Act, and the people who sell hemp are actually obeying the law and have access to all the amenities that normal legal companies would have. And it's all based upon a license and a time of testing. And that's the only difference between marijuana and THCA hemp flower. So it is basically, just conventional, regular old cannabis.
What's been your experience with law enforcement? I mean, you talked about since 2018, these cannabis convictions have been, unconstitutional. So have you felt any pushback with your approach
Oh,
to these
yes,
products?
100%. They tried to frame me and my partner up. That's part of why I'm doing this, man, is that they literally used the justice system as a weapon to try to convict my partner of a felony crime that was going to lead to 10 to 20 years in prison when I did absolutely nothing wrong. It was one of these syrups that they said that we were manufacturing out of my partner's house, which was a lie. We have these in registered facilities. The police set us up and did a strategic stop, and after an investigation of what we're doing, and they tried to present to the grand jury that we were just manufacturing drugs out of this dude's house. They refused to take any of our testing. They refused to acknowledge any of our licensing, and they tried to get an expedited indictment through a grand jury that would have made him go to trial and us burn up $100,000 in order to prove his innocence, and we still would have not been guaranteed to win, and he could have went to prison for the rest of his life, which would have left me to, as a transplant patient, facing a life sentence in prison. They tried to kill me, buddy. Like, I know what they were trying to do. They tried to use the law as a weapon to destroy my business and my life. And that is the reality that we're facing. I had to go before a judge and show him everything. And then he asked me to get an attorney, stopped the expedited um, indictment, and we presented that we had all the licenses and everything. And they dismissed all of it as a miscarriage of justice. But literally, the police were strategically using the law and know all the processes of the law to financially pin me down and destroy my business and put me in prison for the rest of my life. And that was within the last 3 years of me starting this business. They don't like what we're doing in any way, shape, or form, because I believe they generate massive revenues from it being illegal. And now that this is actually going into the community rather than their pockets, they have the most to lose from cannabis being legal. Is definitely your local government agencies. They're the police department specifically. The schools are going to get pumped full of cash. The fire departments, the water company, everybody else, now that they're getting 8.5% sales tax off all cannabis sales, they're going to be rolling in the dough. But before, it was they get to seize all this asset forfeiture and stuff, and it all went straight to the police department. They just lost all of that ability to do that, and now it actually gets spread out to the whole community, not towards brand new M16s. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That was part of why I did it. Is they came after me to try and kill me, and I felt the best way to beat them was legitimately through engineering and using their own system against them to reverse engineer these products into legal products that would handicap them in a way that would not allow them to destroy people's lives. Once I figured out that they framed everyone for the last 5 years, because that's what's realistically happening, and they tried to do it to me.
Has that tampered down a bit? Or, I mean, do you still feel like you have a target on your back?
Oh, all the time, 100%. But most of the police avoid me because I think that they understand that if they get educated and then that they actually know that they're violating people's rights, that they could then be held accountable for that. I've tried to meet with my local sheriff 13 times in the last year. I've called every month just for a sit down as a business owner who pays a lot. I'm generating a lot of money in taxes for Denton County, man. He won't acknowledge my existence because they want to play ignorant as that they don't know so they can continue to arrest people for crimes that aren't crimes. If you get caught with any THCA product, it doesn't matter what brand it is, period. The state police or the state crime lab, I have the state police's own crime lab documents from their director showing that they are falsely convicting people and they know it, but as long as they play ignorant, they don't care. And they just, how do I explain this? The police just need a reason of doubt to arrest you, and then they make you figure it out through the system. And unless you're rich and can afford
Right.
good counsel, you're fucked. So they're
Yeah, there's
basically
no
just
way that you
targeting poor
can.
people.
Yeah, there's no way that you could really come back and say, "Well, test the product. It's legal, right?" I mean, to go through all that after the fact that you've been arrested, it's probably nearly impossible. It's an uphill battle at
It
that
would it
point.
would be $25,000
Wow.
or more. Like it's absolutely
That's more than a
insane.
DUI.
Oh, for sure. For you to start challenging them in court, they make you go through their testing laboratories, and a lot of them won't recognize. You're gonna have to pay a special team of lawyers because 99% of lawyers for this is huge business for criminal defense lawyers too. They don't want this. They are making so much money off of charging you $5,000 to plead guilty to a crime. It's so easy. All they do is collect money. There's just a huge racket in all directions. So as long as everyone remains stupid, you know what I mean, and says they didn't read the law, which I think is criminally negligent. If you're a criminal defense attorney and for 5 years something's legal and you just didn't read the law and you took millions of dollars from clients to get them out of trouble and you told them to plead guilty to crimes that weren't crimes, that's not really doing your job. You didn't really get the representation that you deserved as anyone here, man. Not especially if you got a public defender. They just sold you down the river. So
Right.
that's what everyone needs to understand. They've arrested 11 million people for this stuff, man. So this isn't like, oh, this rare case. This is happening that hundreds of thousands of times a day.
It's
And
wild.
it's wild, man. It
So
really is.
I mean, so the Texas hemp community is obviously very vocal when it comes to like decriminalization efforts, right? Initiatives on the ballot. Um, is anyone talking about this besides you?
No, they don't want to. So I've come to the conclusion that most of the people in the big business and all the lobbyists of the hemp industry, they only want to focus on big ag and production of non-THC cannabis. They all want to be part of a particular university group, if you will, and they want to make GMO weed that has no THC in it that will that they can make clothing and stuff
Like
out of here.
Delta. Wait, are you talking about so more like material goods, or are you talking about like Delta
Yeah,
8
like the hemp people
products?
here are not, I don't think they represent any of the intoxicants because the big hemp people that represent here are all really in bed with the Compassionate Care Act people. So you can't have one and the other. So I don't see any of the representation is true here. It's all false. Like no one acknowledges the laws or wants to because it's not profitable for them, and they all want to sell $400,000 medical marijuana licenses. So how I want to know how all these people who pretend to represent the hemp community who are selling $400,000 marijuana licenses, taking $8,000 non-refundable applications through the state police, and they're raking in millions of dollars off this racket called medical marijuana in Texas, which is a scam of a program, in my opinion. And then tell you that they're representing the hemp program when all they're talking about is the industrial production of hemp. They don't really represent the intoxicating hemp side of things. I don't think on a real scale. I think it's a facade, because realistically, cannabis is legal. No one's acknowledging it in power, but yet you can buy it on Facebook now.
Yeah.
Does
So
everyone else not see how weird this is? Like,
well, so what I meant when I asked that, no, I get what you're saying. What I meant when I asked that question is more so like the operators, not the Texas government that represents the hemp.
oh, the
So
operators.
I'm
So
talking about the
really,
operators. Like, are the operators thinking about how you're saying these laws were basically they contradict each other, and how these cannabis convictions have been unconstitutional, and how THCA is basically THC. Like, are there others out there talking, or are you kind of do you feel like
no,
you're the one leading the?
there's a massive community in Texas doing this for sure. It's
Okay.
not. You're gonna find this in almost every smoke shop. Now, I've had like a year head start on everyone, but now every big company is going to be selling this stuff in every smoke shop. I mean, like, even I have some really big contracts with some big name companies. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, this is this. I know it's legal. Everybody who actually knows what's going on knows it's legal, and is what this actually is the federal government legalizing cannabis and handicapping all of the illegal narcotics monopolies the states actually created for themselves, and thumb their nose at the federal government, and literally sold drugs illegally and an all cash business. And I personally think that that's how a lot of these democratic states are funding all of these leftist causes, are through all these all cash laundering of this medical marijuana. And if they are moving it all outside of the country, that means that we're smoking ourselves into poverty. Because if it's a $40 billion a year industry, and 80% of 40 billion is getting moved overseas, that means the Federal Reserve's having to reprint that money, and your 40 billion is now only worth 27 billion. It's just gonna just constantly go down. They can't keep printing money and lifting the 30 states to go that are completely going against these other states who don't have that $40 billion to spend against them. It's impossible for the United States to stay free if a marijuana monopoly is allowed to be handed to these other people. And now I believe the federal government has figured out a way to play dumb, um, legalize cannabis, and overthrow all of the state governments who decided to start illegal narcotics monopolies and thumb their nose at the federal government. Because realistically, they overthrew the federal government when they created these cannabis monopolies for themselves. People want to say that they're private corporations that own these companies, but realistically, they don't. It's only registered through the state. The state issues you the license. The state taxes you. The state's the only one that's making money. All the businesses are going bankrupt because it's like 80% taxation by the time it hits the consumer. That's intentional, man. They have, as soon as you go bankrupt, they reissue your license to somebody else. So the state is the licensed manufacturer, the licensed producer, the licensed processor, the licensed distributor, operating under a facade of fake corporations that they tax at such an exuberant rate. They constantly bankrupt and transfer their license to somebody else, and just constantly victimize society and charge unconstitutional 40% taxes on the consumer. And they're financing your own enslavement with it. And that's how it's all working.
It's it's fucking amazing how it's so gamed, right? Like the way you put it, how it's so gamed out. And it's transparent in really any industry today. Like, it's greed. Greed
It's
is
greed.
thinking, this fucking country. I mean, you see it in the food, the food industry, you see it in the healthcare industry, you see it in the pharmaceutical industry. It's exhausting, man. And now with cannabis, are you seeing any pushback? Like you mentioned that, more Texas operators, you're leading the charge, but more are coming online with THCA. So like, Are you seeing any pushback from the federal government to kind of stop this
Oh, no, not
production?
at all.
And
See, I have the best attorneys in the United States. The attorney who's considered the specialist in this, his name is Rod Kite. Much love, Rod. You're the
yeah,
greatest.
I've had Rod on the podcast a couple of times,
Yeah,
man.
Rod is the greatest attorney ever. He's
He's
the
great.
smartest person. He's the constitutional patriot. I love this guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I mean, he has in writing from the DEA that through the Analog Act, like I'm saying, if you manufacture the drugs in a lab, they're illegal, just like with the Delta 9. That's why I believe myself to be one of the only real legal cannabis companies in existence, because I don't manufacture my D9. I separate it from nature. I sell the exact same products as a conventional marijuana company, but I have full access to the banking system, to the federal court system, to sue people, bankruptcy protections, you name it. I'm like, I sell tomatoes, and all of
Right.
my SKUs are registered with Visa,
Tax
MasterCard.
deductions, you have that.
100%. I get
Yeah. Yeah.
everything. And Rod has in writing from the DEA that through the Analog Act, THCA, isolate, and diamonds or manufactured isomers are illegal in THCA, but the flower is totally legal, and that's their interpretation. So once I knew that the DEA gave my lawyer in writing the interpretation that the flower was good, I was like, okay, everybody, look at my tinfoil hat. Watch this. Hold my beer. You know what I mean? I was gone.
Green light. Yeah, for
Green
sure.
light. They basically gave me carte blanche to kneecap all the weed companies.
Wow. Wow.
That's the way I see it. And now, if you went to Champs this last month, bro, there isn't a vendor there not selling THCA. I conquered them all. They're done. There won't be a marijuana company left by the end of 2024.
So speaking of, I mean, you're looking ahead. What's in store for Wyatt Perp? I mean, it sounds like, I mean, you guys definitely have a really exhaustive line of products, right? Everything from, you showed me the syrup to edibles to flour. I mean, what are you guys focused on? What's kind of your future goals at this point?
I mean, I really want to get all 5 verticals built out. I want to get all the production built out where I'm not having to buy and resell any kind of flower from licensed other licensees. So I just need to expand my internal production, and I want to start up some dispensaries. I think that the smoke shop model is not necessarily the future. I think that if there's going to be regulation, it's going to come down to the distribution. Because I mean, realistically, if you can buy this shit in a gas station, 12-year-old kids are going to end up getting their hands on it. So
Right.
I'm going to try and set the bar and open a dispensary model in Texas that doesn't sell all the kratom and the pipes or tobacco products.
Or
It's going to
sex
be a cannabis.
products.
Yeah, nothing like that. It's going to be a legit cannabis store. You're going to come into my facilities, and you're going to be able to buy the most premium cannabis products on the planet. And there's going to be a guard there. You're going to get checked in. You're not going to have to worry about any people like that you don't want to be around. You know what I mean? It's going to be a higher class environment, and vision, kind of just bring the dispensary vision to Texas rather than the smoke shop version. Like I
Yeah, it's
I
weird.
don't. It's weird to me that that right now that you can go into, there's smoke shops. It wasn't like when I was a kid. When I was a kid, there was 2 smoke shops in the whole DFW. There was like the Gas Pipe and Zebra Heads. So you had to like figure out a way to pay somebody to, it was a real pain in the ass to get a new piece when I was a youngster. You know what I mean? Now you have these things on literally every corner, and
Yeah.
I mean, it's way more accessible to the youth. So I want to set the bar for actually showing responsibility like I have in my manufacturing and my quality of products. I also want to reset that bar with the distribution model. So that's what I'm going to be working on over this next year, is really solidifying a distribution setup that I would expect everyone else for the state to make everyone else follow the most responsible way. Get in front of everything already. Be California compliant in Texas before they can even get here to mitigate me into nothing. Already form and create those SOPs to not have to worry about any regulations. Just stay ahead of the curve, because I feel like a lot of people are going to get regulated out of business. They don't have chain of custody paperwork. So, like I was trying to explain to you, if you grow it on a marijuana farm, it's marijuana. That's legally registered as weed. It had a tag on it that says this is a marijuana plant, and someone paid millions of dollars for that license to sell it as marijuana. So if you have a COA that says that that's compliant, that don't make a shit. That doesn't matter unless you can prove that it was hemp right now. Like I said, it's all weed when the cops test it. So unless you can prove that it came from a registered hemp farm under a registered hemp license, like you are in possession of marijuana legally. And that's what I offer, is an actual legitimate product, is not just weed with a COA, but a full chain of custody that shows, hey, this is where this goes back to. These people can stand behind this. Here's the license numbers. Here's COAs that are less than 30 days old with everybody's name on it, with a full chain of custody. So everything comes directly from the farm to my customers. Like, I have this set up to really try to eliminate any fraud or unauthorized people from being able to gain access. Because with my oil, I can honestly say not one consumer has ever smoked my products that I'm aware of. My oil only goes to licensed manufacturers who manufacture compliant finished goods. Like, they have to sign paperwork and be responsible. Like, I really am a stickler for trying to do this the right way and set an example that has to be followed, not something that they can tear down easily. I'm building my foundation on stone, not sand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's beautifully said. I'm curious. You mentioned that, the vision of your dispensary. Any thoughts on where the first store might be? And if you're looking for suggestions, Denton County,
Dude,
Louisville,
it's
Flower
probably going to
Mound.
be Denton County for
All
real. Like,
right,
I grew up
perfect.
here as a kid. I went to Lake Dallas High School. I went to juvie at Denton, in Denton for like a year when I was a kid. Like, I would love nothing more than to open a dispo right across from from right around the jail, where people can just get out of jail, go down and get a joint and be like, "Fuck this,
I got
man."
out. Yeah, fuck
Yeah,
yeah.
man. Anyways, I really want to start with Denton County just because it's home and I have all the support of everybody that I grew up with here. And I've self-funded everything here. So I haven't taken any investor capital. I haven't taken any loans. I've just literally worked my way from like 25 grand was the initial investment. In 3 years, we're doing like 10 figures a year.
Wow,
I'm not
that's
10
pretty good.
figures, 7 figures a
Yeah,
year,
you said
about 3
7.
million.
Yeah. Wow.
That's
Well, that's
crazy,
incredible.
right?
It is. Yeah, and you talked about the oil. I didn't get a chance to try the oil, but that's one thing that I
That's
want to
what's in the
try.
gummies. All, like,
Oh,
no one
so
can smoke the oil. Like, it's illegal for anyone to have the oil at over 0.3%. But my oil, I believe, is just such a far superior product to what everybody else has, that's
got you.
that's
Yeah.
that's Texas. I'm gonna be known as the Texas oil man. When it's all
I-
said and done, this THCA flower, this is legal federally. You can go in every state and buy this in any smoke shop now. The cat's out of the bag. Can't put this genie back in the bottle. There's going to be about 50, $60 billion generated off this new industry that was created this year. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. They don't even have enough time to legislate it. It's an election year. They're not going to piss off 300 million people who just
no.
got legal weed before they vote everyone out of office already. Everyone's already pissed. It's not happening. So, dude, it's set here for the next like 2 years, and by then there's gonna be $100 billion that went through the banks on Visa cards, and it's over. They're gonna just implement it into society, and I kind of feel like maybe the Delta 8 and all the synthetics was to even warm it up the people to get to this point, and maybe they strategically saw it this way happening because it was a big puzzle to figure out, but this is
Yeah.
the legislation. I'm just the first person to actually understand the blueprint and create a machine based upon the laws that are written federally. Where I believe that for the last 12 to 13 years that, there's been medical and recreational cannabis, they've basically thumbed their nose at the feds and said, we're going to obey by state law. And I'm basically saying, you to the state, I'm going to obey by federal law. And now I have access to the federal court system to sue you for selling illegal narcotics in violation of my federally legal hemp products. So they better understand what they're doing. They are selling illegal drugs. This is crazy. MedMen's defense in federal court after they had some issues with their hedge funds investors who tried to sue them was that they couldn't be sued in federal court because they sell Schedule I narcotics and that they don't have access to the court system. So my plan eventually, as soon as I have the money, is I want people to support us so that we can go to federal court and use their own legal defense against them and sue all of them into non-existence for what they've done. Because they screwed over all the legacy people. They tried to box all of the people like me out and hand it to a bunch of corporate stooges who ruined everything. And they don't need to have any part of it. They need to be banished from ever touching this industry ever again, not handed even more of it. These corporate guys got to go pound sand. They don't even use cannabis. They have no spiritual connection to the plant, and the people have the power, not them. This is proof of it. We need the people to step up and exhibit their right and their constitutional rights. Now that this is part of a treaty, you know what I mean? They can't. This is serious. This is Article 2. This is the law of the land. If these law enforcement officers believe in the Constitution of the United States, this is it. The same privileges that gave them the ability to point guns at people and ruin their lives over marijuana, now that was taken from them as long as they're in possession of hemp.
I love the passion, man. I love your story. It's amazing. I can't wait to keep following your journey and have you back on in the near future to see how things are progressing and evolving. It's super interesting, man. And I just appreciate you sharing it with me and the audience. Is there anything that you want to leave everyone with before we wrap up here?
Yeah, totally. We're redoing our website. Just check us out, wyattperp.com. Yeah, that's really it. Just support us in any way you can. Understand that the newspaper calls me Mr. Natural because I do have something special, and what I have is very different and it's very special. And I feel like it really needs to be coveted, and the people need to understand that literally for the entire CBD industry has been throwing away all of the natural THC for 5 years so that they could create patents and make money, and ignored all of this technology. And there's enough THC in the byproducts of this isolate manufacturing process to get every person on earth high like 100 times a year, like just thrown away on
The
purpose.
mother liquor.
The mother liquor. That's it. It's called raffinate in a scientific term, but you can't make any crystal in nature. Like you can't make a crystal from this without having the byproduct of a waste, and that's what is all the natural THC and all the natural cannabinoids, not just THC. So a lot of people are obsessed with the THC, but I really believe that the ends and all of the other minors are the key to unlocking a lot of things that are going to be very helpful to a lot of people. It's not just the THC, it's all the minor cannabinoids. So all of those are natural too that are being just disposed of. I feel like isolate should be the byproduct of the mother liquor production, not the mother liquor, the byproduct of the isolate production. They reversed everything to make it a corporate friendly product where they could patent everything and build these fancy labs to where only people with tens of millions of dollars could even attempt to get these patents, when they threw away all the nature in barrels and tried to bury it. And then I came along and fucked everything up.
Keep blowing shit up, man. It's fun. And
It is fun, dude.
you're on the right path. And like I said, man, I really appreciate your time. And let's do it again real soon, all right?
Yeah, I really appreciate you letting me come on tonight and just truth bomb everyone. I think that this will settle in with some people when they realize, hey man, cannabis is legal. It's federally legal. I just have to obey the laws in order to follow the processes to do that. And now all of these massive cannabis companies are even on Facebook selling it. All this THCA flower, and if it's natural, it's just conventional type 1 cannabis grown under the right licensing. It's not some special crazy genetics or anything like that. It's basically all cannabis.
Awesome. Absolutely, man. Well, hey, let's do it again. Thank you again, and thank you all for listening. Until next time. See you,
See you later,
Wyatt.
Kevin. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cannabinoid Connect, the nation's most diverse cannabis related podcast.